This show is brought to you by the All Pro Nation Radio Network. Be sure to like and subscribe and check us out online at allpronation.com, where fans have a voice.
Hello and good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Sports Greek Podcast. This is episode 8. I'm your host, Victor Logothetis. Let's get the business stuff out of the way. You can get me on Twitter or follow me on Twitter at BigGreek24. My email address is victorlogo13@gmail.com. Our Facebook page is the Sports Greek. It's a sunny Monday morning here in Wilmington, Delaware, and by Wednesday we're looking at temperatures up around 72 degrees here in February. That's fantastic. The baseball camps opened last week with pitchers and catchers reporting on Wednesday and Thursday. This week we'll see the workouts. We'll see the offensive players coming in. Baseball starting to ramp up, and it's an exciting time of year. I know I love baseball. I know a lot of people that do. So we're going to be talking some baseball today. We'll also talk a few other things as well. So let's get right to it. So since our last show, the New York Mets went out and got themselves a pitcher, 18-game winner Jason Vargas, pitched with the Royals last year. They signed him to a 2-year deal. A little bit of depth to that rotation. It's had some question marks. So he'll join DeGrom, Syndergaard, hopefully a healthy Harvey. So he'll slide in there somewhere, anywhere from, I guess, 1 to 4, not knowing how good Wheeler's going to be. He hasn't pitched in the past couple of years. Lugo's coming off injuries. Matz is coming off a bad year and some injuries. So they felt the need to go out and get Vargas to a very reasonable 2-year contract, which oddly enough, if the Mets trade him, they have to pay him $250,000. Also, some other moves. The Phillies signed left-handed reliever Fernando Abad over the weekend. Earlier this morning, it was reported the Angels went out and got themselves 2 Chris's, Chris Young, an outfielder, and also Chris Carter, who just 2 seasons ago led the National League in both games played and home runs for the Milwaukee Brewers. Struggled mightily with the Yankees last year. Ended up finishing out his season with the AAA affiliate of the Oakland Athletics. Also, the Baltimore Orioles finally got themselves a pitcher last week, picking up right-handed pitcher Andrew Kashner to a 2-year, $16 million contract, which has an option for the 2020 season. Kashner is 31 years old, will fit into their rotation behind Bundy and Gausman. I'm sure the Orioles are not quite done yet, but that was a nice pickup at a fairly reduced rate. Kashner's best year came with the Padres in 2013. He went 10-9 with a 3.09 ERA and a 1.13 WHIP. So a durable pitcher, and he'll give the Orioles some much-needed innings coming into this season. But the really big news was that first baseman Eric Hosmer, late of the Royals, had finally signed a contract. It had been reported that he had a 7-year offer on the table from the Padres for about $140. Not sure of exactly the money, but he ended up signing for 8 years and $144 million, and he's going to be able to opt out after year 5 if he so chooses. Hosmer had his best year last year in 25 home runs, 94 RBIs, 31 doubles. He hit .318 with a .385 on-base percentage, slugged .498. So he goes to San Diego, 8 years, $144. Let's see if that might grease the wheels from some of the other free agents that are still out there. J.D. Martinez, who last week we'd heard might be going to the Red Sox. That still has not happened. We'll see if the Hosmer deal changes anything for the likes of the J.D. Martinez's, the Lynns, the Arrietas. Mike Moustakas is still out there, so it'll be very interesting to see now, especially as the camps are opening and games are going to be starting to be played here in the next 5 to 7 days. Some of these free agents will go ahead and start signing. So this past weekend, and I hope everybody had a great weekend. The NBA All-Star Game was this past weekend, and can't say I typically watch the game. I did not last night, I'll tell you that. But Joel Embid made the All-Star Game this year for the first time. Many thought he should have made it last year, but he did not. Ben Simmons did not make the All-Star team, even after all the injuries and the substitutions. Ben Simmons still kept off the squad. I think he played in the World Game on Friday or Saturday, whenever that was. But he's more than likely the NBA Rookie of the Year. I think it's atrocious that he was kept off the roster. You can't tell me he's not one of the best players at his position in the NBA today. But talking about Embiid for a moment, I was at the Sixers Heat game last Wednesday, Valentine's night. Embiid seems that every night he is a game-time decision. You don't know when he's playing until roughly 6 o'clock in the evening. For whatever reason, ownership thinks that's kind of cool to do with him, and I understand with his history and the fact they waited a couple of years after drafting him before he could finally play. I understand everything that went through it. That's all well and good. He did not play the game against the Heat, a game the Sixers really needed because the Heat were, I think, a half a game behind them going into that game on Wednesday. And without Embiid and trailing by as many as 24 points in the third quarter, the Sixers did fight back. They did win the game 104-102. But so Embiid is not healthy enough to play that game. That's the last game before All-Star Weekend. Yet there's no thought given to the fact that he's playing the World Game on Friday. He's playing the All-Star Game last night, and he had a great All-Star game. 19 points, 8 rebounds. Had a wicked block shot in the game as well, but. My issue with this whole thing is that he is a question every day during the season. Again, like I said just a few moments ago, he's always a game-time decision, it seems. It's always 6 o'clock before you know where this guy's going to play. Back-to-back games, can't do that. She's finally starting to do that a little bit more this year. Load management, blah, 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 blah. But he's able to play an All-Star, 2 meaningless games All-Star weekend, but he can't play a game on Wednesday night. They end up losing that game. They fall behind the Heat in the playoff race instead of staying ahead of them. And, last I checked, it's more important for Embiid to be healthy and available for the Sixers, the team that paid all the money to draft him, paid all the money for his medical expenses, whose fan base has waited painstakingly through the process, as I put air quotes up here, for this guy to finally come in and play. And they finally have him and Simmons together. They're finally winning games. They're 30-25 right now. They have not lost a game since the Eagles won the Super Bowl 2 weeks ago. They finally got some momentum. And, what would have happened if Embiid came down awkwardly in this All-Star game, in a meaningless game, and hurt his ankle, hurt his foot, and then is out for an extended period of time in the second half. Last year, there was a lot of buzz. The Sixers were playing really well in January, and he ended up playing a game, I believe it was against the Rockets. It was a nationally televised game. And he got hurt, and I don't think he played but maybe one game the rest of the season, and the Sixers just completely went, the opposite direction. So you know how important this guy is to this team, as is Simmons. I'm not going to negate or undercut his value whatsoever, but, the Sixers need Embiid to be healthy for their playoff run, not to be healthy for a meaningless All-Star game. And I just question the Sixers' thought process is why didn't they either demand that he be restricted to so many minutes or not play at all? Have him go, enjoy the weekend, enjoy the festivities, be seen, everything else. Just don't play the game. I mean, there's going to be a lot of All-Star games for this guy in his future as long as he stays healthy, okay? That's the future is very bright, it seems, for Joel Embiid. We want to make sure the future is going to be just as bright for the Philadelphia 76ers as well. Because at the end of the day, as athletes tend to do, when they get to be a free agent or whatnot, they'll go off to another ball club for the big money, and screw the team that drafted him, screw the team that paid the medical expenses and the money to get this guy healthy. So you need to capitalize on him while you have him. Make the playoffs this year. You don't know what's going to happen. You could win the first round. You could make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. You don't know. It all depends on how hot you get going into the playoffs. So that's my take on the Embiid situation, and I'm glad he played well. I'm glad he came out of it healthy. And here, the Sixers will start their last games going into the playoffs now. Like I said, they're 30-25, so that's about 27 games left to play. Looks like they're going to win about 45 games. So that could put them anywhere in the 5 to 6 spot in the Eastern Conference. So it's going to be fun to see the Sixers play the second half. The games I've been to have been a lot of fun. They're filling the arena again. It's great to see basketball back in Philadelphia. All those great Sixers teams we used to see back in the 70s and 80s with Dr. J and Moses Malone, Darryl Dawkins, Bobby Jones, Mo Cheeks, all those guys. The rivalry with the Celts when they drafted Larry Bird, and then also the rivalry with the Lakers. It was just seemed for a period of time there from the 79-80 season right in through the mid 80s. You had either the Sixers or the Celtics representing the Eastern Conference, and the Lakers for the most part. I think the Rockets snuck in there a couple of times, and that was pretty much it until the Pistons became really good, until the Bulls became really good. So it's great to see basketball back in Philly. The fans are excited, and it would just be a damn shame that in a meaningless game to see basically the franchise get injured and not be able to play. We've already seen this happen in football, and the Eagles were fortunate enough to work around it and win the Super Bowl, but that doesn't happen all the time. And in a situation with basketball where, one player's loss is magnified even more because you don't have as many players on the team to pick up the slack, losing a guy like Embid for the rest of the season would be just a complete tragedy for the Philadelphia 76ers this year. So now let's get on to baseball, and today we're going to talk about the National League East. So here's how the schedule is going to work this week. This episode, we're going to do the National League East. We'll do the American League East. Next week, we'll do the two Central divisions the first 2 weeks of March, and then we'll do the Western divisions. The final two episodes in March will be the 19th and 26th. Probably we'll do the American League West on March 19th, and since I'm going out to Arizona to catch some spring training action, probably we'll wait to do the National League West until I return, which will be I'll be back late in the week of the 19th. So the episode we post on the week of the 26th, we'll deal with the National League West at that time, since I would have gotten to see quite a few of their teams out there in Arizona. So let's talk about the National League Eastern Division baseball. The Washington Nationals won the division comfortably last year, but yet again failed in the first round. That seems to be their deal. 2012, 2014, 2016, 2017, just cannot get over the hump, winning the division each of those years, going to the playoffs, in a couple of cases being the favorite team in the preseason to go all the way, but just cannot seem to get over the hump and win that first round. It's cost a couple managers their jobs in certain situations, but it's just odd that they are the most talented team in the division, and they just cannot seem to get through the playoffs. As always, the Nationals are led by perennial MVP candidate Bryce Harper, who in just 111 games last year hit .319 and hit 29 home runs, missing the last part of the season after he stepped on first base awkwardly, a wet first base in a game that was being played with some bad weather conditions, and he missed the rest of the season after that point. Played 111 games, 29 homers, a .319 batting average. Certainly, again, he is the franchise down there. Their infield, Zimmerman at first base, 33 doubles, 36 home runs, drove in 108 runs in a really great comeback season for him after having a couple of down years. Daniel Murphy, who has since leaving the Mets, has just done nothing but hit the ball, 40-plus doubles. He hit .322. Anthony Rendon, 40-some-odd doubles, 20-plus home runs, 100 RBIs playing third base. And Trey Turner, another one who had some injury issues last year, played shortstop. That's the one thing when you look at this division. It's actually kind of exciting when you think about it. You look at all the teams in the division; they've all got young, exciting shortstops. You have Trey Turner in Washington. You have J.P. Crawford, who's going to take the job in Philadelphia after they traded Freddie Galvis out to San Diego. You have Rosario in New York, who got a call up last year and looked pretty good. Should be very fun to watch this year for the Mets fans. And then also out in Atlanta, you got Dansby Swanson, who 2 years ago came up late, looked pretty good, and last year he struggled. Ended up going back down to the minors for a stretch, but he comes back and will be the shortstop for the Braves to go with Ozzie Albies over at second base, who got a look last year, and he's a solid defensive second baseman. So the division is ripe with youth at shortstop. It's a fun position, and the last few years there's been a lot of young shortstops coming into Major League Baseball. Carlos Correa and Frankie Lindor came up back in 15, both around the same time. Seager came up with the Dodgers late that year and took over the job 2 years ago, and has done nothing but play well for the Dodgers. So it's been a fun thing to watch this position over the past couple of years. But the Washington Nats they're completely stacked. They'll get Eaton back to play center field unless they want to shift him over to play left and let Robles play center field. He's the number 2 prospect, according to Baseball Prospectus and all of baseball. He's got all the tools. He came up last year for a very brief period, and he looked good. He's got speed. He can catch, can hit. May not ever hit for any real power. That could develop later on as he grows and matures. But we'll see what kind of spring he has. But like most ball clubs, they may not want to bring him up because the arbitration clock will start ticking. So they may wait to actually bring him up till they actually really need him. They re-signed Kendrick, so they have him. He can play some outfield. He certainly can play a little bit of left field for them. They got Matt Adams, who just hit 20 home runs between the Cardinals and Braves last year. He played a little bit of outfield for the Braves. He is a first baseman by trade, but kind of nice you can have a guy coming off your bench from the left side who hit 20 home runs a year ago who's not even probably going to start for you. So that's pretty good. But Scherzer and Strasburg had the rotation. Gio Gonzalez had a nice year last year. The only issue with the Nats last year was their bullpen at the beginning of the year. Sean Kelly and Glover were the closers coming out of spring training. Kelly had injury issues, gave up like 12 home runs in 20-some innings. So, they went out. They got Madsen. They brought in Doolittle. They got Blanton. So they've shored up the bullpen. Sammy Solis, who 2 years ago as a rookie looked really good, had some injury issues last year. He should be there healthy this year to come in from the left side. They traded for Kinsler at the trade deadline last year from Milwaukee. So the bullpen is much deeper now than it was a year ago. They should not have the issues that they had going into the season last year. They'll also get Kelly back healthy this year. They're just going to have to watch his workload. First-year manager Davey Martinez, who was Joe Madden's bench coach both in Tampa and Chicago with the Cubs, comes in to manage this ball club. And one thing for sure is job security is not something that you get with the Washington Nationals. After Davey Johnson left, had Matt Williams came in for 2 years, and 14 of 15 got fired after the 15 season after they just completely imploded down the stretch, losing the division to the eventual National League champion New York Mets. But he did get them to the playoffs in 2014. And then Dusty Baker, all he did the last 2 years was get the Nationals to the playoffs, but again, couldn't get them out of the first round. And so now they're going to go with Davey Martinez, and we'll see how that works out. He's one of 3 new managers in the division, Mickey Callaway being one with the Mets, and Gabe Kapler being one with the Phillies. But the Nationals, unless they just lose a lot of parts to injury this year, just really don't play up to even half of their potential. They're going to win 90-plus games. They're going to win the division. They're going to be a favorite again to win the National League pennant and get to the World Series. Let's talk about the Philadelphia Phillies for a moment. The Phillies team won 66 games last year. A lot of youth on this ball club now. Brought up Rhys Hoskins last year. They traded away Freddie Galvis so that J.P. Crawford will now play shortstop. He got a cup of coffee at the Major League level last year. Jorge Alfaro and Nick Williams, both who were netted in the Cole Hamels trade, made their debuts last year and got to play some. And again, we're talking small sample sizes. They signed Carlos Santana to play first base, which was an interesting move, but I think a good one. Switch hitter, solid production every year, very consistent hitter. He'll hit in Citizens Bank Park. He'll anywhere from 25 to 30 home runs, and depending on where he hits in the lineup, he can drive in 90 plus runs. He walks a lot. He's a patient hitter. So I think that was a pretty solid move by the Phillies. And actually, Carlos Santana has really turned himself into a very good defensive first baseman from where he started. He was a catcher when he came up, shifted over to first base, struggled a little bit for a couple of years, but he's actually become a very solid first baseman. But the Phillies, the rest of the team, you have Hernandez at second base, a guy that gets on base very well, plays really good defense at second. You don't hear too much about him. Odubel Herrera, $1 million talent with a 5-cent head, the stupid bat flips, the constant mistakes in base running. Hernandez has some of that problem too. If Kapler can get through to him, and he can be the player that he shows 5 days a week, that could be a huge thing for the Phillies. The other big thing is Rhys Hoskins hit for 50 games last year, hit a lot of home runs. Also is very patient at the plate, took some walks, but can he do this for 150 games instead of 50? So he's going to have to try and do it for 3 times the number of games this year than he did last year, and playing a new position, playing left field. He's a natural first baseman, so he's going to get shifted out to the outfield this year. We'll see how that goes for him. We'll see if he is able to continue to produce as he did last year. I think Rhys Hoskins is a heck of a player, but again, he's someone we saw for 50 games last year. Let's see what he can do over the course of a long season. Behind the plate, Alfaro and Rupp are going to battle it out. Alfaro's got all the offensive talent in the world. He certainly can hit. He hit 300 for the Phillies last year and about 100 little more than 100 at bat, showed some power. He does not walk a lot, not a big plate discipline kind of guy, which could get exposed as a long season goes on. He could be great in stretches, and then for very long stretches look lost at the plate. The big knock on him when he was traded over here was his defensive ability behind the plate, his catching skills and whatnot. So a lot of that's going to determine if he's going to be able to start for the Phillies. You have Aaron out there and Nick Williams, two outfielders out there, had a wonderful season for the Phillies last year, but got hurt. He has to show he can stay healthy if he's going to expect to get a lot of playing time. Williams looked really good in the time that he got as well. But, again, can you do it for 100-plus games instead of, 40 to 50? Third base for the Phillies is Maikel Franco. And in just an awful year last year, he still managed to hit 24 home runs, drive in 76 runs. Again, that's not great production for, what he's capable of doing, clearly. Chipped in 29 doubles, played 154 games. So he's durable. But, again, he's another one that from swing to swing can look completely lost. So again, we're really sure we're going to get out of him. 230 batting average is going to get it done, especially because he doesn't walk that much. He had 281 on base percentage. The guy that really gets lost in the shuffle here for the Phillies is Tommy Joseph. With Santana, signed in here to play first base. What are you going to do with Tommy Joseph? He had 22 home runs last year, 27 doubles. So we'll see where he ends up. I don't know that they're going to be able to trade him at any point in time. So that's, again, a rather interesting situation for the Phillies because Tommy Joseph really can't do anything but play first base. He was a former catcher, but because of the concussions he sustained while catching, they had to shift him over to play first base. So we'll see how that works out as well. Where the Phillies really kind of get into the bit of the issues is going to be in their rotation. Aaron Nola pitched really well when he was healthy. Jared Eichhoff got off to a rough start last year, didn't get a lot of run support. I think he won 11 or 12 games the year before and did not miss a start back in 2016. But last year, he ended up being injured. I think he won one game before the All-Star break. Again, much of that was not because of poor pitching, but just lack of offensive support. But Eichhoff still managed to take the ball 24 times last year. Nola only made 27 starts. So it's, Nick Pivetta ended up making 26 starts. Velasquez only made 15. You had Jake Thompson made a few starts. Zach Eflin. I think Mark Leiter Jr. made a few starts. So the Phillies basically go in the rotation. You got Nola, you got Eichhoff, you got Velasquez, who awesome strikeout pitcher, but doesn't seem to be able to pitch more than 5 innings to start, which doesn't do your bullpen any good. And the bullpen is actually pretty strong. You've got Neris, you've got they went out and re-signed Pat Neshek, who had a fantastic season for the Phillies. We're getting traded over to the Rockies. They brought in Fernando Abad, as I mentioned at the top of the show, solid lefty type reliever. So they've got a nice. They've got the backside of the pitching staff, pretty much in place. So they're looking there. But it's the starters have to be healthy. They have to be able to take the ball. And they have to pitch well. That's going to be what really determines what the Phillies can do. The Phillies offensively should be fun to watch. The ballpark they play in is very offensive. They're a young team, which could be good and bad, but they should put up some runs. And like I said, we'll see. I mean, if Aaron Althier can play right field all year and be healthy and not get nicked up so much and play more than 107 games, I think the Phillies outfield could be a very productive outfield. Then you've got Nick Williams, who will play wherever they can get him in, because he certainly showed some flashes last year when he came up. So I think that'll be really interesting for the Phillies. But the Phillies still, you're looking at a 66-win team last year, a rookie manager this year, and Gabe Kapler. You have no idea what this guy's gonna do from day to day. He's a bit of a wild card. But, if the Phillies can get up and win 76 games like the projections I've seen, that's a 10-game improvement. That's going in the right direction. So that's I think that would be an awesome thing to see. I mean, what you don't want to see, I've gotten into some arguments on social media with some of the Phillies fans, and I am one of them. I'm certainly a Phillies fan, but I'm not one of those guys that says, hey, let's go out and blow money on say, Jake Arrieta. That was one name that got thrown around a little bit. They're talking, hey, why don't you, maybe the Phillies went out and signed Arrieta to a deal like the Sixers when they got Redick. And, my counterpoint was, the Sixers coming into this year, they were expecting to be a playoff team. The Phillies aren't. So, signing a guy like Redick for the Sixers made absolute sense because, they were looking at getting into the NBA playoff tournament, which you get 8 teams in each conference. You don't get that in baseball. So, what's the best that you can expect? You signed an Arrieta who has regressed the past few years. His best year was 2015. He was 22-6, won the Cy Young, a 1.77 ERA. His WHIP was under 1 at .86. 2 years ago, he was 18-8 with a 3.10 ERA. So his ERA jumped a run and a half a game, basically. The strikeouts went down from 236 to 190, and then dropped again last year from 190 to 163. And his workload has dropped every year: 33 starts, 31 starts, 30 starts, 229 innings, 197, 168. I think he's going to be – this is his age 32 season. So you give the guy – let's say he accepts a 2-year deal. So you got him here this year and you got him here next year. Are you going to win in any point in time? Probably not. One guy shot back to me that, I guess it just comes down to seeing a guy who won a Cy Young Award pitch here. And I'm like, well, that's great if you want to sell, season tickets and media guides. But if you're trying to win, you've got to see if these guys can pitch. You've got to see if Velasquez can make it through a full season. You have to see if Nola and Eichhoff can make 35 starts each and win some ball games for you. You have to see in the back end of that rotation what some of these guys can do. And if they're not those guys, you gotta go out and get somebody else. But Jake Arrieta is not. He's not the kind of guy that you want to be bringing in here at this point in time for the money he's going to want, just in hopes of that he pitches well and you can trade him. At the trade deadline, it's flawed thinking at best. They thought that with Buchholz last year. You saw how that worked out for the Phillies. I think if they just stay the course and just continue to watch their young players continue to grow and get better, I know it's tough to watch sometimes, but it's the right thing to do. Look at the Astros. You didn't see them sign a Jake Arrieta a year or two before they were ready to contend. They continue to stay with the young players, and they won the World Series last year, and they may just win another one this year. So, again, we'll see how it all works out for the Phillies. Was not a big fan of them letting McCannon go, to be honest with you. I thought he was a good solid manager, but they saw something in Kapler. We'll give him a shot, and we'll see what happens. Talking about pitching, let's talk about the New York Mets, because that's where their seasons begin and end. They've got DeGrom and Syndergaard. And I said last week, I think we talked about the Mets a little bit. When you talk about DeGrom and Syndergaard, you've got two guys on that ball club that can absolutely match up against any other rotation in baseball, and they can match up against Strasburg and Scherzer in the East as well. Then they went out and got Vargas, who won 18 games last year. Did not finish strong, but we'll see what happens. He's kind of the left-handed version of Bartolo Colon, if you kind of know where I'm coming from. But if they get a healthy Matt Harvey, who has not been healthy the last couple of years, if Zach Wheeler can come back in and pitch like they thought he could, if Matz can come in and pitch like he did when he came up in 15 and for stretches in 16, then the Mets rotation is going to be pretty solid. Their back end, their bullpen, they've got Ramos, they've got Swarzak, they've got Blevins, they've got Robles, then they've got Familia, who's just a year removed from coming off a 51-save season. So, Callaway has said that Familia at least will be the closer from the onset. But if he struggles, you can put Ramos in as your closer, even if it's for just a week, just to let Familia get his head clear. But Familia for 2 seasons looked pretty dominant as the closer. Had some issues last year, got hurt, and it really never got on track. Nor did the Mets for that matter. So you have that situation. I like what they've done with their offense. They've got stability now at third base, bringing in Todd Frazier, who will just play very good defense. He'll play 150 games at third base. He'll probably hit 25 to 30 home runs, driving 80 to 90 runs. That's his production. He's consistent. They've got consistency at this position now for the first time in 3 years. You've got the young shortstop Rosario. That's really the biggest question mark, is will he hold up for the full season. He's got a bag full of talent. He's going to be very exciting to watch. You got Asdrubal Cabrera, who's a veteran, can play second base. He can hit for power. He's decent enough defensively. First base, you got Adrian Gonzalez. You brought him in on the cheap, basically hoping to light a fire under Dominic Smith's rear end, who got a call up last year after a pretty good AAA season and just didn't really perform very well for the Mets. Looked overmatched at times, but he's evidently lost a lot of weight coming into camp. And we'll see what kind of training camp he has. But if he doesn't do well, they can send him back to AAA. He can get some more seasoning, and Adrian Gonzalez can platoon with Wilmer Flores at first base. And they've got Jose Reyes to pick up the slack in the infield. He could play any of the three other infield positions besides first base. The outfield, they re-signed Jay Bruce, who they traded to the Indians last year. So he comes back in to play right field. You have hopefully a healthy Cespedes playing left. Those guys will produce. Bruce will hit 30-plus home runs for the Mets, driving a bunch of runs. Cespedes certainly can hit you anywhere from 285 to 300 with 30-some home runs when healthy. Center field's the one position that you have to worry about a little bit. Conforto was hurt going down the stretch last year. Not going to be back for opening day. Had a really good season last year. So now you're looking at Nimmo or Lagares. Lagares is the better defender. He's a Gold Glove defender out in center field. The guy can go pretty much chase down anything out in the outfield. The question with him is how much will he hit? And in Nimmo's case, we just don't really know enough. Can he, perform for a full season? So that really is the one of the question marks there. Then you have the catching situation. Plawecki did a nice job. They traded Rene Rivera last year. Plawecki did a nice job for him. Travis d'Arnaud, though, is the guy you want to see take the job. He did a great job for them coming off the disabled list back in 2015 when they won the pennant. And he's the guy you want. He's the guy that really could be the most talented catcher if he can just stay healthy and hit and play good defense for them. And you've got a new manager, Mickey Callaway, who seems to be a very I won't say touchy-feely kind of guy, but more of a kind of has good personal skills, can relate to the players. Certainly, he was a major league pitcher for a little while, so we'll see how he handles the media. His press conferences are very entertaining, but we'll see how he handles the media in the middle of a 6-game losing streak in the middle of June when the Mets are starting to go the opposite direction. The Mets' projections are an 81-81 season. But if they have three or four healthy starters and a lineup that can score some runs and hit some home runs up at Citi Field, it could be a fun summer. So after the Mets, we're looking at the Braves. The Braves are another team somewhat like the Phillies, except they have probably better starting pitching. Their rotation is led by Tehran and Mike Fultonevich. Both of them are solid, if not unspectacular. They did pick up Brandon McCarthy and Scott Kazmir, both of whom have long injury histories. Kazmir missed all of last year, I believe, with a hip injury of some sort. Their lineup has some young players. Ozzie Albiz is their second baseman. He's 21 years old. Dansby Swanson goes into his second full year at shortstop. He did have a brief spell at the minors last year after struggling at the plate for a little bit. Camargo played third base for a good part of last year. When Adonis Garcia went down with an injury, he made just, I think, 3 errors in about, 200 and 300 innings of defensive play, hit fairly well, and we'll see how he goes. But their best prospect at third base is actually Austin Riley, who will get an opportunity at camp. They also have the top prospect in baseball right now, outfielder Ronald Acuna, who could crack into the outfield rotation somewhere. They have Ender Inciarte, in center field. Nick Markakis is over in right field, the former Baltimore Orioles star. And as of right now, Lane Adams is penciled in to play left field. Tyler Flowers and Kurt Suzuki, the veteran, are the two catchers for the Atlanta Braves. Braves projection, according to Pacoda, which is from the Baseball Prospectus, is 76 wins, so they're right around where the Phillies are. So we'll see how it all plays out down south. Then you have the Miami Marlins, who have pretty much gotten rid of everything that wasn't nailed down. Stanton's gone, Ozuna's gone, Yelich is gone. There's rumor that the catcher Real Muto could be next. So a complete teardown from the Marlins. They're probably going to be a dreadful baseball team to watch this year down in Miami. I imagine they'll probably win about 59, 60 games this year. So summing up the National League East, the Washington Nationals are the clear heavy favorites to win that division. The Mets would be a distant second, but the Mets actually could, because of their pitching, if healthy, and if they can get some run production from Cespedes, Bruce, and the third baseman Frazier, they could actually make a little bit of noise. They've got a solid back end of the bullpen. They're the one team that, if healthy, is very complete, unlike the Phillies, unlike the Braves. where the Braves have a couple of good starters, not a lot of bullpen, where the Phillies have a solid bullpen and back end of the bullpen, but their starters are questionable. The Mets actually, like I said, if Cespedes, Frazier, and Bruce can carry the ball club a little bit, if Adrian Gonzalez could be anything like was before last year in terms of run production, the Mets could actually be a surprise team in the National League to secure a wild card spot. So that's going to do it for this week. We appreciate everybody listening, downloading and listening. Sorry about that. Again, you can follow me on Twitter at BigGreek24. The Facebook page is The Sports Greek, and the email address is victorlogo13@gmail.com. Next show, we're going to do the American League East. And as of recording at this point, this week, I'm also going to be a guest on the Purple Post podcast. So you can look that up on Twitter at Purple Post. It's a Vikings podcast. They're going to have me come on and talk a little bit about the state of the NFC East in football. So I'm looking forward to that. So certainly if you want to go and follow them on Twitter, you'll see when that episode comes out. So everybody have a great week. We're going to talk about the American League East next week, as well as anything else that comes up in the world of sports in the meantime. Have a great week, and we look forward to talking to you again next week.